Hey everyone, this is MrAddOil again, helping you fight your today for your better tomorrow. So we're going to continue this video series and we're going to be talking about this third best practice in helping you prepare for a coding bootcamp, which is financial preparation. And we're going to talk about that coming up next. So the first thing you want to do is have a budget. And I recommend using Mint to create a budget using a mobile app or a desktop app like Mint. And then it binds to your credit cards, your debit cards, or whatever you use to pay electronically, and it tracks it automatically, where you can review your weekly expenses, incomes, and all that online using that mobile app called Mint. And I highly recommend using that because the better control, the more visibility you have over your budget, your weekly expenses, even your daily expenses, the better. And when you can practice that prior to joining a coding bootcamp, the better, because right now I'm guessing that you already have a full-time job, you have steady income coming in. But once you transition and actually join a coding bootcamp, every dollar that you spend, every dollar that you have needs to be the most effective dollar that you have. So learning how to budget, having that habit built in place is super important, and I recommend you doing that. Next, you want to build some sort of emergency fund, or what I call a freedom fund. And I have a whole video series dedicated on that, and I'll link a link to my blog where I wrote like a pretty comprehensive blog post on why it's important to create an emergency fund, especially a one-year one. But I know that for a lot of people, including myself, a one-year emergency fund is something I'm still trying to hit, and it's difficult to do that. Right now, I'm kind of sitting at 6 months, a little bit more if I stretch it, but it's really powerful to have an emergency fund in place while you're working, building that up so that when you join your coding bootcamp, you won't have to endure with the potential, fatal ramifications of not having a savings, liquid cash savings. Like when you don't have an emergency fund in place when you're doing your coding bootcamp and something comes up, maybe an emergency with your health, or like there's just unknown expenses. Like if you don't have an emergency fund, you're gonna have to swipe your credit card, and then that'll put you into bad debt, and then that'll destroy your financial future. And also like potentially your coding career too, because then when you start your coding career in the future, you have to pay off these bad debt, and that's a terrible place to be in, and you're putting yourself into setting yourself up for failure if you don't have that emergency fund in place before you join your coding bootcamp. Another tip that I recommend to consider or prepare right now before you join your coding bootcamp in the future, in the financial aspect, is to think about some sort of part-time job or some sort of part-time gig you can do while you're in your coding bootcamp. So in my blog on this topic, I listed out a couple of remote jobs that you can work from home. One of them will be becoming a website tester. It's something that I've considered and did a lot of research in doing, but in practicality, I ended up not using it for a couple of reasons, because I think it's like really mentally draining for you to do that and then do a coding bootcamp, do a coding bootcamp and like learn, because then being a website tester, it's not as strenuous as like programming, but when it comes to it takes out it drains your mental capacity. There you go. That's what I was trying to say. So I've chosen not to be a website tester because of that reason, and I've been just driving Lyft. So I'm fortunate enough to be in a city, San Francisco, where the demand for shared rides is pretty up there. And then I do that because I drive Lyft because it's just easier, it's less mentally draining, because I don't really think about complex things. I'm just like kind of cruising and just trying to get my passenger to their destination. It's super easy, and this helps me mitigate or reduce the burn rate my monthly burn rate to a couple hundreds versus 1,000. Sometimes if I plan it really right, with the first habit of like adhering to a strict budget, then I can break even. And that really helps me from not burning into my savings. So another thing in tandem that you can do on top of a part-time gig during your coding bootcamp is the possibility of doing freelance development. But at the same time, like when I talk to other friends who've done freelance development, who was a self-taught developer, did freelancing to get his like full-time gig at a startup, he mentioned that it's either you invest all your time in a coding bootcamp trying to get land a full-time job, or you go the freelance developer route. For me, I'm trying to find the happy middle ground. I know that while I'm in this coding bootcamp, me just learning, documenting my experience using a blog, via my blog and a YouTube channel, that's already, and on top of that, driving Lyft as a part-time job, it's already taxing or draining my time. Like my calendar is filled up to the brim, I feel. So freelancing at this point is not viable, but let's say I'm planning for this. Like once I graduate from a coding bootcamp, then I can start kind of rolling that in to be a freelance developer, because I'm not really learning at that point anymore. I will be trying to find employment, which like looking for a job is a full-time job, but you can kind of blend that in where you can take on a project for a month, within a month, and complete that. And that'll be good on your resume, saying that someone paid you for development work, and it'll give you some sort of boost in your income on top of your part-time job while you're trying to make your monthly burn rate, you know, even out to be a break-even point while you look for a full-time developer gig. Cool, that's all I have for the financial preparation section. Like I mentioned, I created a couple videos and a blog post on why it's important for you to have an emergency fund, specifically a 1-year one. And you can look, I recommend that you look into those resources to get a more comprehensive explanation of why preparing financially would make sense for your coding bootcamp. But then again, this is MrAddOil, helping you fight your today for your better tomorrow. I hope that this video was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.